Emily Carter never imagined that the worst night of her life would begin with a plate of grilled salmon flying in slow motion. At 26 years old, 7 months pregnant, and balancing trays at Riverside Grill in downtown Columbus, she had learned 3 essential things. Swollen feet lie about shoe size, wealthy clients rarely look servers in the eye, and public falls never ever happen without an audience. That Friday evening in March, with the dining room reserved for a gala dinner hosted by Whitman Biotech, the third lesson would be confirmed in the worst possible way, before cameras, spotlights, and the man who, 10 years earlier, had called her scholarship charity case in front of their entire private school class where she studied on a full scholarship. The truth was that Emily did not want to be there. Not that night, not in that tight uniform that barely closed over her belly, not serving people who probably spent on a single bottle of wine what she earned in a month. But baby expenses did not pay themselves, and pride, however strong, was not currency accepted at pharmacies. So there she was, with swollen feet, squeezed into heels that Sandra insisted were mandatory for special events, as if elegance compensated for pain. The dining room was impeccable, as it always was when money was involved. White orchid arrangements, orchids of all things. Who spends a fortune on flowers that will wilt in 2 days, decorated each table. Crystal glasses reflected the soft lights of the imported central chandelier, and the smell of lobster bisque mixed with butter sauce made even veteran servers, accustomed to fine food, salivate. There was discreet background music, conversations in low and polite tones, and that artificial atmosphere of people who pretended intimacy while calculating the value of each other's clothes. Emily adjusted her black uniform for the 10th time that hour and breathed deeply, trying to ignore the stabbing pain in her back that had accompanied her since the afternoon. The manager, Sandra, a thin woman with a shrill voice and overly strong perfume, passed by her like a hurricane of high heels and concentrated irritation. "Emily, you take the main table. It is the most important of the night, and for the love of God, all the saints and whoever else you want to invoke, do not drop anything. These people pay more for the event than you earn in 6 months, maybe even a year, considering the tips you do not receive." "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Sandra. I needed exactly that inspiring motivation to improve my day," Emily murmured quietly. But the manager had already disappeared toward the kitchen, probably to terrorize some cook about the temperature of the bread. Rachel, her best friend and co-worker, appeared beside her with an empty tray and that crooked smile that always announced trouble or gossip, usually both. "Guess who is at the main table?" "I do not know, Rachel." "The governor, the mayor, some businessman who will completely ignore me while I say good appetite, better, or worse, depending on how you deal with unresolved adolescent trauma." Rachel discreetly pointed to the center of the dining room, where the most luxurious table gleamed under the crystal chandelier. Jason Whitman, the crown prince of advanced genetics, owner of Whitman Biotech, magazine cover model, and possessor of the most inflated ego in Columbus, possibly in all of Ohio. Emily's stomach dropped faster than a stock market crash. It could not be. Of all people, all restaurants, all nights of the year, it had to be him. She forced her eyes in the indicated direction, and there was Jason Whitman, now 36 years old, even more handsome than in high school, if that was physically possible, or if she was going crazy with anger mixed with bad memories. Perfectly combed black hair, square jaw that seemed sculpted by Michelangelo on an inspired day, custom-made grey suit that probably cost her rent for an entire year, maybe 2 if it included utilities. He was laughing at something a man beside him said, and that laugh, confident patrician, irritatingly charming, made Emily want to stick her head in the kitchen freezer and never come out. "He will not recognize me," she said, more to herself than to Rachel, trying to convince herself of something she knew was a lie. "I sincerely hope so, because if he recognizes you, you will have to decide between spitting in the salmon or throwing it in his face. And considering that you desperately need this job and that Sandra has been watching you since you got pregnant, I would suggest neither option. Thanks for the comforting strategic analysis, Rachel. Your ability to calm me is impressive. I am here to serve, literally. Emily filled her lungs with courage, mixed with old resentment, and walked to the main table, each step a negotiation between dignity and necessity. 5 men in impeccable suits, 2 extremely elegant women with jewelry that sparkled brighter than the chandelier, and Jason Whitman in the center, as always, as if the world revolved around him and was obligated to thank him for the privilege. She began serving the plates, moving as little as possible, keeping her eyes down, trying to be invisible, the way servers learn to be when serving powerful people. It worked, until it worked too well. Miss, this sauce is absolutely divine. Do you know if there is pepper? I love a spicy touch, one of the women asked, and Emily almost mentally thanked for being called Miss instead of hey you, or simply being ignored with a snap of fingers. There is cayenne pepper in the kitchen, madam. I will bring it right away. When she returned with the small bottle of artisan pepper that the restaurant charged $15 extra on the menu, Jason was standing, gesturing while explaining something about gene therapies to Swiss investors who seemed either too impressed or too polite to disagree. His voice was deep, measured, calculated, as if each word were a gold coin being carefully placed on the table. Emily walked around the group, placed the pepper beside the elegant client, and was retreating discreetly when her heel, that damned 2-inch heel that Sandra insisted gave elegance and professionalism, caught on an almost imperceptible unevenness in the wooden floor. What happened next was cinematic in a way Emily would never wish to relive. She tried to balance, compensating for the weight of her belly to one side, but the movement was too abrupt. The tray flew from her hands as if it had gained wings. 3 salmon plates took off in a perfect and poetic arc, and she went straight to the floor, on her knees, with the side of her belly hitting the sharp edge of a chair. The pain was instantaneous, acute, cutting, suffocating. The entire dining room fell silent in less than 2 seconds. All heads turned simultaneously. Someone let out an "oh" of embarrassed surprise. A woman brought her hand to her mouth, and no one, absolutely no one, moved to help her, except that someone, somewhere in the room, was filming everything with their cell phone. Emily felt shame rise through her body like fever, hot and unbearable. She tried to get up alone, but her belly was heavy as if carrying the entire world. Her knees burned where they had hit the floor, and her hands slipped in the butter sauce spread across the floor in orange and embarrassing puddles. That was when a firm and warm hand grabbed her arm. She slowly raised her eyes, already expecting to see Sandra with a face of imminent dismissal, but it was him. Jason Whitman was there, crouched beside her, his expensive suit definitely stained with sauce, with an expression that Emily could not completely decipher. Surprise, pity, guilt, recognition. "Are you okay?" he asked, and his voice came out softer than she expected, almost gentle. "I am great, wonderful. I love falling in public, spreading food on the floor, and humiliating myself in front of strangers. I do this every weekend as a hobby. It is very relaxing." He almost smiled, almost. His dark eyes shone with something that could be humor or compassion. He helped her up with surprising care, one hand on her arm and the other supporting her back. And Emily noticed his hands trembled slightly. Or it was her impression. Or she was going into shock and imagining things. Sandra appeared like lightning, pulling Emily by the other arm with unnecessary force. "I am terribly sorry, Dr. Whitman. I sincerely apologize on behalf of the restaurant. I will resolve this immediately. It will not happen again." "She needs a doctor," Jason said, his voice firm now, with no room for debate. "I need my job," Emily retorted, and immediately regretted it because her voice came out choked, weak, defeated. Sandra practically dragged Emily to the back of the restaurant, away from curious eyes and whispers that were already beginning. Rachel ran after, holding a clean towel and a bottle of water. In the tiny locker room that smelled of mold and cheap disinfectant, Emily sat on the wooden bench, breathing with difficulty. Her belly was sore where it had hit the chair, but the baby moved after a few seconds, as if saying, "Calm down. "Mum, I am here. We are fine." She closed her eyes tightly. She could not cry. Not there, not in front of Sandra, not in front of anyone. Crying was a luxury she could not afford. "You are suspended until Monday. I need to assess the damages and speak with the owners. Sandra, please, I need to work. I cannot go without my salary. Monday, Emily, and pray hard that no one from the event decides to sue the restaurant for negligence. Because if that happens, you will be the first to be fired. Now go home. Immediately." Rachel waited for Sandra to leave, slamming the door, and sat on the bench beside Emily, putting her arm around her friend's trembling shoulders. "That jerk had to be there precisely today, on the night you most needed everything to go right. He did not even recognize me, Rachel. To him, I am just another pregnant server who fell on the floor and ruined his important dinner. Another invisible. Is that good or bad? I do not know. But I am absolutely certain I will find out." And she found out. The next day, Saturday morning, when she woke up at 9 with 53 messages on her cell phone, most from completely unknown numbers. The fall video had gone viral overnight. "Pregnant server ignored by businessmen at luxury dinner in Columbus," said the headline of Ohio's most accessed news portal. Columbus elite turns back on struggling worker except one. 2 million views in less than 12 hours, thousands of outraged comments, furious shares. And Jason Whitman's face right in the center of the controversy, because, of course, he was the only person who had moved to help. But the internet does not forgive half measures or incomplete gestures. Emily turned off her cell phone with trembling hands and stared at the peeling ceiling of her tiny bedroom, the humidity stains forming imaginary maps of countries she would never visit. Something was wrong, very wrong. Because in that fall, in the brief seconds when Jason Whitman held her arm and helped her up, she had seen something in his eyes that definitely should not be there. Recognition. He knew who she was. He had remembered. And now, with the video exploding on social media and transforming a private humiliation into a public spectacle, she knew he would return. The question hammering in her head, preventing her from going back to sleep, was simple and terrifying. Would he return out of guilt, for public relations strategy, to save the company's image, or for something neither of them was minimally ready to admit out loud? Jason Whitman's office was on the 20th floor of a mirrored building in the Arena District, with a spectacular panoramic view of the Scioto River and absurdly expensive minimalist decor that silently screamed, "I earn in dollars and invest in euros." That Monday morning, however, the privileged view was completely lost on him. Jason stared at the laptop screen for the 11th time, watching the video that had transformed Whitman Biotech into the favorite villain of Brazilian social networks in less than 48 hours. 57 insistent calls from panicked press advisors, 17 rescheduled or cancelled meetings, 4 Swiss investors requesting urgent clarifications about the company's ethical issues, and a single question hammering relentlessly in his head like annoying music that never goes away. How had he not recognized Emily Carter immediately? But it was a lie. He had recognized her. In the exact second she approached the main table, carrying that heavy tray with the care of someone who cannot make mistakes, with that serious and determined manner of someone who carries the entire world on their shoulders and still finds extra space for a bit of well-placed sarcasm in her brown eyes. Emily, the girl who sat 3 rows behind him at Columbus Academy, who got better grades than the entire class combined, who read philosophy books during recess while others played basketball, who never, ever lowered her head when the idiots, shamefully including him, made cruel jokes about her scholarship. Jason had spent 10 entire years trying to forget the day when, pressured by imbecile friends and the pathetic desire to be accepted, he called her scholarship charity case in front of everyone. She had looked at him with a devastating mixture of disappointment and anger, so intense, so pure, that Jason felt shame for the first time in his privileged life. And he never forgot that look. Never. Now she was pregnant, working as a server to survive, and the video of her falling on the floor was being used as a perfect symbol of social inequality on absolutely all the country's news channels. Great. Simply wonderful. Perfect. The luxurious office door opened without ceremony, without a polite knock. Lucas Whitman entered with that calculated smile that always seemed to hide an extremely malicious inside joke. Hair too blonde to be natural, probably dyed at some very expensive salon, impeccable navy blue suit custom-made in London, and the presumptuous air of someone who had just won the lottery and was planning to rub the winning ticket in everyone's face. "Good morning, dear big brother. I saw you became a national trending topic. Congratulations. I always knew you were good at attracting attention. Lucas, if you came here exclusively to irritate me, mission successfully accomplished. It worked perfectly. You can leave now. I came to help, Jason. I'm supportive like that. After all, I am also the vice president of this company. And unlike you, I know exactly how to resolve image crises without getting emotionally involved." Lucas sat in the leather chair in front of the glass desk, crossing his legs with studied and artificial elegance. Pay a generously fat compensation to the server, make her sign a very strict confidentiality agreement. Done. Problem solved in 48 hours. Maybe 72 if she tries to negotiate values. She has a name. Emily. Oh, you already memorized the name. How touching and moving. Lucas tilted his head to the side, genuinely amused. "Do not tell me you really care about a pregnant server you barely know." Jason clenched his teeth hard, feeling his jaw lock. Arguing with Lucas was exactly like playing chess against someone who maliciously changed the rules in the middle of the game and still found their own cheating funny. He breathed deeply 3 times, desperately trying to maintain the professional calm the situation required. "I'm going to personally speak with her, offer real help. Private doctor, paid leave, complete prenatal care, whatever she needs." How romantic, and incredibly naive, I must add. But that is fine. It is your career that is on fire on social networks, not mine. I will just sit comfortably here and watch the show. Lucas stood up with calculated movements, adjusting his very expensive suit. "Oh, and Jason, be careful with last-minute heroes. They usually fall even uglier and more publicly than pregnant servers. The fall of a false hero always becomes a bigger headline." When Lucas finally left the office, Jason punched the glass desk hard enough to make the pen holder jump and almost fall. Churchill, his English bulldog, who slept lazily on the padded bed beside the panoramic window, lifted his heavy head, let out a deep grunt of canine disapproval, and immediately went back to sleep. Even the dog thought he was making a mistake. 2 hours and 15 minutes later, after cancelling 4 appointments and inventing a mediocre excuse about urgent personal matters for his secretary, Jason stood nervously in front of a deteriorated 3-story building in Franklinton, with peeling paint revealing old layers of colour, rusty bars on windows, and an external staircase that creaked threateningly with each step. The address had been absurdly easy to obtain, obvious and questionable privileges of having money and an efficient secretary. The dubious ethics of this invasive decision, however, was extremely debatable and probably illegal. Jason slowly climbed to the 2nd floor, each step creaking loudly, found the faded door of apartment 207, and knocked 3 times firmly before completely losing his accumulated courage. Emily opened the door cautiously. She was wearing loose and faded sweatpants and a simple white t-shirt, her dark hair tied in a completely messy bun, no makeup at all, and even so, especially like this, vulnerable and real, she was indisputably the most beautiful woman Jason had seen in years. Her brown eyes widened in initial shock, then narrowed dangerously in justified distrust. "What exactly are you doing here, Jason?" "I came to talk to you. To talk. I'm not minimally interested in suing anyone or extorting your company, if that is what you are thinking. It is nothing like that." "Then what exactly? Did you come to take photos for social media? Make a nice post showing that the kind and sensitive CEO genuinely cares about the starving plebs?" Jason swallowed his considerable pride. He deserved that. He deserved much, much more than that. "Can I come in?" 5 minutes. Just 5. "I solemnly promise that afterwards I will leave and you never need to see me in your life again." Emily hesitated visibly, her hand still firm on the door, as if carefully measuring whether it was really worth letting him in or simply slamming the door hard in his privileged face. Finally, after a long 10 tense seconds, she sighed heavily and took a calculated step to the side. 5 minutes, timed, and take off your expensive shoes. The floor is old and I just cleaned it. The apartment was microscopically tiny. Living room, kitchenette that barely fit one person, a narrow hallway that probably led to the only bedroom and shared bathroom. Meticulously clean, organized with obsessive care, with simple and old but well-maintained furniture and an improvised shelf full of books ranging from cheap paperback novels to professional pastry technical manuals. Jason noticed a large glass jar on the narrow kitchen counter with a label carefully handwritten, "Fund for the baby Ethan." It had maybe $200 in crumpled bills and some coins. Something squeezed painfully in his chest. Emily crossed her arms defensively over her belly, waiting. Jason realized embarrassedly that he was staring at the poor apartment like an idiot tourist and forced himself to speak. "I recognized you on Friday, at the restaurant." She blinked 3 times, genuinely surprised. "What? At Riverside Grill? I recognized you immediately. Emily Carter, the indisputably most intelligent, most dedicated and most impressive girl at Columbus Academy. The girl that I—" He stopped abruptly, his voice failing shamefully. "The girl that I cowardly humiliated in front of everyone because I was a completely spoiled imbecile, who pathetically thought that being funny for idiot friends was infinitely more important than being minimally decent as a human being." The silence that followed was so heavy, so dense, that Jason literally felt the crushing weight on his shoulders. Emily said absolutely nothing. She just stared at him fixedly, waiting, her brown eyes reading every micro-expression on his face. He continued because he had to continue, because he had come there precisely for this. "I know perfectly well that this does not change anything from the past. I know that a simple apology does not erase 10 entire years of having carried this. But I desperately need you to know, for you to understand, that I thought about that damn day every single day since then, literally every day, and that I am sorry, very, very sorry, from the bottom of what is left of my soul." Emily let out a short laugh, completely without humor. "You must be joking with me." "I am not at all." Jason Whitman, the billionaire owner of Whitman Biotech, CEO on magazine covers, came personally to Franklinton, climbed old stairs, entered my miserable apartment to apologize for something that happened 10 years ago in high school. Yes, exactly that. Why, Jason? Because of the damned viral video. To clean your tarnished image and recover frightened investors? No. Because I should have done this exactly 10 years ago, and because I was too cowardly to do it. He took a cautious step forward, but stopped immediately upon seeing her expression harden defensively. "Emily, I did not come here to offer dirty money or an obscene silence contract. I came to offer real help with no conditions. Private doctor, complete monitoring, financial support, whatever you need. No strings attached, no lawyers involved, no papers to sign. Just let me fix this. At least try to fix it a little." She looked at him penetratingly for a long, eternal moment, her eyes shining intensely with something Jason could not completely identify. Old anger? Deep sadness? Accumulated exhaustion? Hidden hope? You know what is funny, Jason? 10 years ago, I would have literally given everything to hear exactly that from you. I would have cried with relief. I would have instantly forgiven you. I would have thought you were a secret, charming prince, temporarily disguised as a jerk. But today I am 7 months pregnant by a man who solemnly promised me the entire world and completely disappeared when the test came back positive. Today I work 10 daily hours standing to pay for this tiny one-room apartment. Today I do not have the luxury of blindly trusting wealthy men who conveniently appear out of nowhere, wanting to fix broken things. She opened the door decisively. "Your 5 minutes are up." Jason did not move an inch. He knew rationally that he should leave immediately, that insisting would only dramatically worsen things. But there was something deep in her voice, a pain so visceral, so familiar, that he instantly recognized, because he carried his version too. "Who is the baby's father, Emily?" She frowned, confused. "Why the hell do you want to know that? Because if he abandoned you pregnant, then he is a pathetic idiot who definitely does not deserve you even remotely. And because I genuinely want to help, for real, with no ulterior motives." Emily looked at her large belly for a long time, her hand resting protectively over it in an unconscious and maternal gesture. When she finally spoke, her voice came out low, almost a painful whisper. "Lucas Whitman." The world completely stopped spinning. Jason felt his blood instantly freeze in his veins. "What? Your brother, Lucas Whitman. He is Ethan's father." If someone had told Jason, on the quiet morning of that Monday, that he would spend the entire afternoon sitting uncomfortably on the cold floor of Emily Carter's tiny apartment, listening in detail to the most depressing and revolting story of the decade, while sharing with her a miserable half-melted coconut ice cream container he had found forgotten in the old freezer, he would have laughed in the person's face and told them to urgently seek a psychiatrist. But there he was, in a wrinkled suit worth $5,000, loose tie hanging crooked from his neck, expensive Italian shoes thrown near the door, ice cream slowly melting on the forgotten spoon, while Emily recounted in a tired voice how his brother, his damned psychopath brother Lucas, had seduced, promised serious commitment, sworn eternal love, and cowardly disappeared as soon as she showed him the trembling positive pregnancy test. He said textually that he would carefully think of a viable solution, Emily continued, her voice increasingly tired and choked. 3 days later, he blocked my cell phone number, completely changed his phone. When I desperately tried to speak with him personally at the company office, the cold secretary said I was not on the authorized visitors list, as if I were a terrorist threat to biotech's national security. Jason felt an explosive mixture of deep disgust, murderous rage and guilt, so intense he could barely breathe properly. Lucas. Of course it was Lucas, always Lucas. The brother who always knew exactly where to stick the sharp knife to cause maximum possible damage and still smile while twisting the blade. The brother who cultivated destroying people as a sophisticated hobby. "Why did you not look for me at the time, when you found out?" Emily stared at him as if he had definitely lost his mind and needed immediate hospitalization. "Seriously, Jason, are you kidding? After what you did to me in high school, the public humiliation you caused me, you genuinely think I would voluntarily look for another Whitman? Another man from your family? Fair. Absolutely, painfully fair." Jason carefully put the melted ice cream container aside and ran both hands over his face repeatedly, trying to process the flood of information. He needed to think. He urgently needed a plan. But all he could feel was a visceral and violent desire to repeatedly punch Lucas until he begged, crying for forgiveness and mercy. "Does he know you are 7 months pregnant? That the baby is almost being born? He knows perfectly. He does not care minimally. And your family? Your parents?" Emily's expression completely closed, like a door slamming hard. "My parents are evangelical. The fundamentalist type who thinks pregnancy outside of marriage is an unforgivable mortal sin that stains generations." When I told them, trembling, crying, my father literally said I had brought eternal shame to the family. My mother cried for 3 straight hours and then, with swollen eyes, formally asked me to leave the house. She packed my things in 2 suitcases while I watched paralyzed. I have not spoken to them for 5 complete months. My younger sister calls secretly sometimes, crying, saying she misses me. Jason felt an intense desire to punch something hard. Maybe the wall, maybe his own privileged face, maybe go straight to her parents' house and shout inconvenient truths. "Emily, I'm so sorry." "No," she interrupted sharply, raising her hand. "Do not look at me with pity. I hate pity. I have had enough pity poured to fill the ocean and live a lifetime. It is not pity, it is genuine admiration." She blinked 3 times, visibly surprised. "What? You are holding all this alone? Heavy work, advanced pregnancy, cruel family rejection, a complete jerk of my brother who abandoned you pregnant. And even so, you are here, standing, firm, fighting, surviving. I do not know anyone like that. No one with that strength." Emily quickly looked away, but Jason saw perfectly the revealing slight tremor in her lips. For a long moment, he sincerely thought she would cry. Instead, surprisingly, she let out a hoarse and genuine laugh. "You are very, very good with pretty words, Jason. It must be exactly why you can so easily fool Swiss investors." He smiled. "Actually, the Swiss deeply hate me. They think I talk excessively too much." Imagine that. What an impressive surprise. They remained in comfortable silence for a moment, the rare type of silence that happens when 2 people finally stop fighting and begin to truly understand each other. It was Emily who broke the silence, her voice hesitant and low. "Why are you doing this, Jason?" "Doing what exactly?" "This, all this. Sitting on the dirty floor of my poor apartment, eating ice cream expired 2 weeks ago, listening to my depressing problems. You have a billionaire empire to manage, important Swiss investors to impress, million-dollar contracts to close. You do not absolutely need to waste precious time with me." Jason looked at her, really looked deeply, without masks. The infinitely tired brown eyes, the completely messy dark hair, the huge belly she stroked, distracted and protectively while talking. And he realized something that deeply frightened him. He did not want to be anywhere else in the world. "Because I spent 10 entire years of my life being exactly the person my parents wanted me to be. The perfect and impeccable CEO, the exemplary and obedient son, the polished face of the company, the Whitman image. And you know what I finally discovered? That absolutely none of that means anything real if at the end of the day I look in the mirror and see the same coward idiot who humiliated a girl in high school just to seem cool to idiot friends." He made a significant pause. "I want to be better. I need to be. And maybe, just maybe, genuinely starting by helping you is the real first step." Emily stared at him fixedly for a long, eternal time, as if trying to decide if he was sincere or just an extremely convincing and well-trained liar. Finally, after analyzing each of his micro-expressions, she sighed deeply. "Okay, you can help, but with 2 non-negotiable conditions." "Which ones?" "First, do not tell Lucas you know about the baby. Do not tell anyone in your family. I do not want to be the new sensationalist scandal of the Whitmans. I already have enough problems without becoming a newspaper headline or magazine gossip. Deal." "Second condition." She pointed at him with the old ice cream spoon. "No pity, no hypocritical charity, no Christian guilt. If you are really going to be in my life, it is as a real person, not as a billionaire CEO trying to clean a dirty conscience. Perfectly understood?" Jason extended his firm hand. Understood and accepted. They shook hands solemnly, and Jason felt a powerful electric current rise through his entire arm. From the sudden way Emily slightly widened her eyes, she felt it too. Neither commented. In the following intense days, Jason's structured routine changed in a way he definitely had not foreseen or planned. He religiously woke up at 5 in the morning, went to the luxurious gym, stopped by Emily's apartment exactly at 7:30 with breakfast. Always something different, because she complained she got nauseous easily from everything. Hot corn muffins one day, bagels with cream cheese the next, fresh varied fruits, freshly squeezed natural juice. She complained, irritated that he was spending too much money, but she ate everything anyway, sometimes repeating, Then he obediently went to the office, participated in boring meetings about complex financial projections and international strategic partnerships, and in the middle of the afternoon invented some minimally convincing excuse to leave early and meet Emily at Sciotto Mile, where she loved to sit to watch the orange sunset painting the river. "Do you not have a billionaire company to run?" she asked sarcastically on a sunny Thursday, while eating delicious tacos bought from an extremely nice food truck vendor who knew Emily by name and always gave extra portion. "I do. But I recently discovered that intelligently delegating is an extremely underestimated skill in the corporate world." "Oh, really? And what exactly is the great CEO delegating?" "Absolutely everything my brother loves to do. Endless boring meetings, tedious financial reports, political dinners with empty conversations." Emily genuinely laughed. "You are playing Lucas against Lucas himself. That is either genius or diabolical. Can it be both simultaneously?" She bit the large taco, sauce dripping from the corner of her mouth. Jason resisted the absurd and inappropriate impulse to clean it with his thumb. Instead, he pointed politely. "You have salsa on your chin. I have salsa in my entire life. It is my permanent natural state." She cleaned with the napkin and sighed, satisfied. "You know, when I obsessively imagined what reuniting with you would be like, I always thought of some elaborate and cinematic revenge, like I would become rich, super successful, powerful, and you would be sorry and humiliated. And what changed? I realized revenge takes a lot of work, and that maybe some people really genuinely change." She looked at him sideways. "Have you changed, Jason? For real?" The question caught him completely off guard. "I am trying every day. That is already something. It means something." That silent night, when Jason finally returned to his apartment, the ridiculously huge 300-square-meter penthouse that suddenly seemed too empty and lifeless, he found Lucas sitting comfortably in the luxurious living room, drinking expensive 50-year-old Scotch whiskey as if he were the absolute owner of the place. "Where have you been disappearing to?" Lucas asked, his voice deliberately slurred. "None of your business." "Funny, because some loyal employees said you have been leaving the office early. Every day, always at exactly the same time." Lucas spun the heavy glass in his hand, the ice clinking musically. "Are you seeing someone? What an impressive surprise. I did not know you had time for personal life." Jason completely ignored the obvious provocation and went straight to his room. But before closing the door hard, Lucas spoke again, and this time there was something dangerously sharp in his calculated voice. Just some fraternal advice from a younger brother, Jason. "Be careful who you choose to get involved with, because some people just desperately want to take advantage of the Whitman surname and everything it means." Jason froze completely. He turned slowly, dangerously. "What exactly are you talking about?" Lucas smiled widely. That venomous smile Jason knew so painfully well. Nothing specific, just a friendly preventive warning. But Jason knew, somehow cursed, Lucas knew about Emily, and that meant the war was just beginning. The fundamental problem with Columbus, Jason discovered observing the vibrant city from above, was that it was simultaneously too small when you desperately wanted absolute privacy, and absurdly too large when you needed to find someone specific. That radiant Saturday morning, he and Emily were at North Market, strategically lost among colorful, varied craft stalls, excited tourists taking selfies at all possible angles, and the unmistakable and distinctive smell of brewing coffee mixed with fresh baked goods and artisan cheese. Emily had stubbornly insisted on buying some baby clothes at cheaper and more accessible stores, and Jason, deeply contradicting all the screaming instincts of his unlimited platinum credit card, reluctantly agreed not to absolutely bank everything. "You can pay for the long lunch," she had said firmly, her brown eyes defiant. "But my son Ethan's clothes I buy alone with my hard-earned money." Stubborn. Incredibly, adorably, and irritatingly stubborn. They were analyzing in detail a baby blue onesie with delicate whale embroidery when Jason instinctively felt someone watching carefully. He turned his head cautiously and froze completely. Beatrice, his absolute favorite aunt, and the only person in the Whitman family he really deeply respected, was exactly 10 feet away, holding an artisan wicker bag and wearing that characteristic ironic smile that always announced interesting problems or inconvenient revelations. Jason. What an absolutely interesting and revealing surprise, finding you here at the market. Emily turned instantly, and Jason saw genuine panic in her brown eyes. He lightly touched her arm, trying to convey calm and security without words. Aunt Beatrice, what are you doing here at North Market? Buying charming gifts for Luciana's daughter's wedding. You know how these endless high society social commitments are. And you? Beatrice looked directly at Emily with genuine and intelligent curiosity, not with the cold and cruel judgment Jason automatically expected from the privileged family. Introduce your pretty friend? Emily Carter, Emily said quickly before Jason could speak, extending her firm hand with dignity. Immense pleasure. Beatrice shook her hand carefully and gently, her extremely intelligent eyes assessing absolutely everything in precise seconds, the evident belly, the simple but clean and well-maintained clothes, the way Jason was positioned instinctively, protectively beside her like a human shield. The pleasure is genuinely mine. Emily, what an absolutely beautiful and strong name. Is it in honor of the poet, or the feeling of being alive against all odds? Emily blinked 3 times, visibly surprised by the unusual and deep question, then genuinely laughed. Honestly, both things. I immensely adore a practical and intelligent woman. Beatrice strategically turned to Jason, her eyes shining with amusement. Dinner at my house, tomorrow Sunday, exactly 7 in the evening. Bring good wine, both of you, mandatorily. Aunt, I honestly do not know if... It was not a polite invitation, Jason. It was a direct and non-negotiable order. Beatrice lovingly winked at Emily. And do not worry at all, dear. I am officially the rebellious black sheep of the Whitman family. You will definitely like me. When Beatrice gracefully walked away among the colorful crowd of tourists, Emily let out all the air she was unconsciously holding, her shoulders relaxing. Is your entire family like this? Frighteningly perceptive and intimidating? Only Aunt Beatrice, and she is terrible, in the best possible sense. Does genuinely good sense for terrible exist? With her, yes, definitely. The special lunch was at Rachel's Cozy Restaurant, a small and incredibly welcoming place near German Village that unquestionably served the best crab cakes in the entire city, maybe even in the state. Rachel received Jason with obvious and protective distrust, crossing her arms and analyzing his every move, but gradually calmed down when Emily emphatically guaranteed, laughing, that he was not another manipulative, heartless Whitman jerk. The conversation flowed surprisingly well, with Rachel telling absolutely embarrassing and hilarious stories of Emily during her turbulent adolescence, and Jason laughing until genuine tears flowed when he discovered a maze that Emily had once bravely broken into the closed principal's office to change the unfair grades of a scholarship student who was being harmed by prejudice. You were a teenage hacker, Jason asked, absolutely incredulous and impressed. I was a digital vigilante, Emily corrected with dignity, raising her chin. Big ethical difference. Were you expelled? Almost. I barely escaped. But the student got the scholarship he deserved. It was completely worth the risk. Jason looked at her with an intense mixture of growing admiration and something deeper, more visceral, that he was definitely not ready to name out loud. You are genuinely incredible. Emily quickly looked away, her cheeks slightly pink. Shut up and eat your crab cake before it gets cold. But the quiet and cheerful afternoon was violently destroyed when Jason received a cold call from Margaret, his mother. Her voice was tense, controlled, dangerous like a sharp blade. Jason, we need to talk, immediately, now. Mom, I am busy about the pregnant server. Jason's blood instantly froze in his veins. How do you know? Because Beatrice personally called me an hour ago, and because I am definitely not an idiot. Come home. Exactly 2 hours. Do not make me wait. She abruptly hung up before he could respond or protest. Jason looked at Emily, who was already standing, reading the situation with frightening precision that only those who survive by developing sharp instinct can achieve. Go, solve things with your family. I will be perfectly fine alone. Emily. Go, Jason, before it gets even worse. But it was already dramatically worsening. When Jason tensely arrived at the absurd Whitman mansion, a ridiculous, imposing three-story construction in Upper Arlington, all in imported glass and very expensive Italian marble with an Olympic pool and a garden designed by an internationally award-winning landscaper, he found not only Margaret waiting, but also Henry, his father, and Lucas, all strategically sitting in the luxurious living room like a medieval tribunal ready for public condemnation and execution. "Sit," Henry ordered, his voice deep and authoritative. Jason deliberately remained standing, defiant. "I prefer to stand, then stand, but listen carefully to every word." Henry crossed his arms, his grey suit impeccable even at home, even on a Saturday. "Beatrice told us in detail about the pregnant server, and yes, before you uselessly ask, Lucas also told us who the baby's biological father is." Jason violently turned to Lucas, who was lazily leaning against the wall, smiling with false angelic innocence. "Son of a—" "Jason!" Margaret interrupted icily. "Language. Language. You are seriously worried about language when Lucas here impregnated a vulnerable woman and cowardly abandoned her pregnant." "I did not abandon her," Lucas said calmly. "I offered a practical and rational solution. She stubbornly refused." "A practical solution? You wanted her to abort her own son." "We are not going to discuss my personal choices," Lucas said, moving away from the wall with elegance. "We are going to discuss your questionable choices. You are getting emotionally involved with her, Jason. Do not uselessly deny it. Everyone saw you two walking around North Market. And if I am getting involved, it is absolutely none of your business." Henry slammed his hand on the polished table with deafening force. "It is our business. You are the public face of Whitman Biotech. You are about to close the biggest billionaire contract in the company's history, and you appear publicly with a server pregnant by your own brother. What message does that send to conservative investors? That I am a decent human being?" "That you are weak," Henry corrected coldly, "and Swiss investors definitely do not trust the weak." Jason felt rage dangerously boiling. For entire years he had swallowed this exact type of conversation. For years he had docilely accepted that image was more important than character, that profit was worth more than people. But looking now at the family, the calculating and cold father, the mother worried only about superficial reputation, the brother smiling as if everything were a fun game, he realized something fundamental. He no longer wanted to be part of this. "You know something," Jason said, his voice dangerously calm. "You are completely right. I am weak. Weak enough to have let you control my entire life for 36 years. Weak enough to have stayed quiet when Lucas made mess after mess. Weak enough to have pretended this family was perfect when absolutely everyone knows we are just rich and completely empty." He walked firmly to the door. "But it is over. I am going to do exactly what I should have done years ago. I am going to choose the right person." "If you walk out that door," Henry said, his voice icy, "you will lose absolutely everything. The company, the contract, the surname." Jason stopped. He turned slowly and smiled. "Great. Perfect. Because I discovered that absolutely none of that is worth anything real if I have to sell my soul to keep it." He left, slamming the door hard, and for the first time in entire decades he felt truly free. Emily was on the abandoned building rooftop, sitting in an old and cracked plastic chair, watching the entire city of Columbus slowly light up its nightlights like giant fireflies, when she received the unexpected call. It was not Jason. The name on the screen showed only a completely unknown number. She hesitated for a long time, her finger hovering over the green button, but finally answered cautiously. Emily Carter. The voice was masculine, polite, slightly drawled and disturbingly familiar, "Who is it?" "Lucas Whitman. I think we need to talk urgently." Emily hung up immediately, her heart racing. The phone rang again, insistent. She hung up again angrily. On the third persistent time, she answered with barely contained fury. "Leave me alone, Lucas. Just 5 minutes. Only 5. I solemnly promise that afterwards you will never hear from me again." There was something in his voice, not exactly despair, but something disturbingly close to it, that made Emily dangerously hesitate. Against absolutely all common sense and all advice Rachel would give, she reluctantly agreed to meet him the next day in a crowded public cafe, with Rachel strategically waiting outside in case something went wrong. Lucas appeared punctually at 3 in the afternoon, dressed casually, but still looking like someone who had just stepped out of the glossy pages of a men's fashion magazine. He sat in front of her with calculated movements, ordered a double espresso, waited for the server to leave, and then spoke with a surprisingly sincere voice. "I was a complete idiot." Emily almost laughed at the audacity. "That is your big revelation." "No. My big revelation, the one that really matters, is that my brother is going to offer you absolutely everything. Money, luxurious house, financial security, stability. And you will accept because you are desperate, because you are alone, because you need it. And then, inevitably, when he gets tired of playing savior hero, you will be left with a broken heart and a son without a father again." Lucas leaned forward, his blue eyes fixed on hers. "I know Jason deeply. He's too good for his own good. He wants to save everyone he meets, but he does not truly love you. He loves the romantic idea of saving you." The words hit Emily like a direct punch to the stomach, because, in the deepest hidden part, she had thought exactly the same thing repeatedly in sleepless dawns. Jason was too good, too attentive, too present. No one was like that for real, without ulterior motives. Or was he? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice dangerously low. "Because I want to get my brother back. I need him at the company, and you are literally in the way, so you do not care at all about the baby, just your position at the company." Lucas smiled, a strangely sad smile, almost human. "I do care. But caring does not necessarily mean being a good father, and I know that perfectly. That is why I will sign an official paper recognizing paternity and establish child support. Generous. You and the baby will be perfectly fine financially, but with one unique condition, which, stay completely away from my brother." Emily felt tears burning intensely in her eyes, but flatly refused to let them fall. "You are absolutely despicable." "I am. But at least I am brutally honest about it." Lucas stood up elegantly, leaving a golden business card on the table. "Think carefully about what I said." When he left, Emily sat there motionless, staring at the card as if it were poison. She thought about Jason's smile when he arrived with hot breakfast. She thought about the endless conversations at Scioto Mile. She thought about the way he looked at her, as if she were the most important and precious thing in the entire world. But then she thought about Lucas speaking in that calm and dangerously venomous voice. "He loves the idea of saving you." Could it be true? Would it all be an elaborate fantasy of hers? 3 days later, at dinner at charming Beatrice's house, Emily still carried the doubt heavy as a stone. Beatrice lived in a beautiful house in the short north, full of classic books, lush plants, and provocative contemporary art. She received the two with genuine and warm enthusiasm, served Argentine red wine for Jason, and natural passion fruit juice for Emily, and the three talked animatedly about absolutely everything, from international politics to traditional recipes for clam chowder, while eating a delicious lasagna that Beatrice swore she had personally learned from an eccentric Italian nun in Rome. "You are beautiful together," Beatrice suddenly commented, in the middle of the milk pudding dessert. Emily almost choked on the pudding. Jason turned completely red. "Aunt, do not aunt me. I have lived 72 years and have a sharp clinical eye for these things. You like each other. It is obvious to anyone with functioning eyes." "It is not that simple," Emily murmured quietly, Of course it is not simple. Nothing involving the Whitmans is minimally simple. But you know what I learned the hard way in 72 years of life? That complicated does not mean impossible. It just means you need to consciously decide if it is worth it. After the comforting dinner, Jason carefully drove Emily home. In the silent car, neither spoke much. When they finally arrived at her building, Emily broke the tense silence. "Jason, I need to ask you something, and I want the absolute truth, always. Why are you doing this? All this gigantic effort, all this precious time with me? Is it because you genuinely like me, or because you want to feel better about the terrible past?" Jason slowly turned off the car. He turned to her, his eyes dark and intensely serious. "Can I be brutally honest? Please." "In the beginning, it was pure guilt. I will not lie to you. I wanted to fix what I did 10 years ago. But then I truly got to know you. I saw how you are strong, funny, stubborn, incredible. I saw how you do not lower your head to anyone. And I realized I was not trying to save you anymore. I was trying to save myself, because for the first time in my entire life, I was with someone who made me want to be better." He firmly held her hand. "So yes, I like you. A lot. Maybe even more than that. And if you do not feel the same, that is okay. But do not doubt for a second my feelings." Emily felt the tears finally escape uncontrollably. "I am scared. I am scared too. What if you get tired of me? What if you get tired of me?" She laughed, crying simultaneously. "You are impossible, and you are perfect." They kissed there, in Jason's old car that absurdly contrasted with his billionaire wealth, and it was the type of kiss that seems to fix broken pieces and create new ones at the same time. But in the following intense days, the war began devastatingly. Lucas spread malicious rumors that Emily was using Jason to extort the billionaire family. The press began investigating aggressively. Investors worriedly questioned the CEO's personal scandal. And at the height of everything, Emily received a cold call from her mother. "You are embarrassing us again." Emily hung up hard. She cried desperately, and she almost gave the baby up for adoption, sincerely believing it was best for everyone. But then Jason appeared, with documented proof of Lucas' corruption, with documents exposing illegal financial schemes, with the firm decision to destroy his own brother, if necessary, to protect Emily. "You do not need to do this," she said, crying. "I do need to, because choosing you is the most right thing I have ever done in my life." And that is how, between public scandals, shared tears, and one more memorable crab cake at Rachel's restaurant, they finally decided, together, whatever happens. Epilogue. 2 years later, Columbus remained beautiful, noisy, chaotic, and full of fascinating contradictions. Emily Carter, now 28 years old, gracefully walked through Roots and River, the small but charming restaurant she and Jason had opened together near the Short North, in a colonial townhouse renovated with love and care. The rustic wooden tables were completely full. Blue-collar workers, street artists, animated families, curious tourists who had initially come for the authentic food, but religiously returned for the welcoming atmosphere and the stories that hung in the air. The menu was purposely simple. Honest crab cakes made with family recipe, perfectly fried chicken, mac and cheese seasoned just right, and desserts Emily personally created every morning before the sun completely rose. Jason was behind the dark wood counter, cheerfully helping with orders. No executive suit, no expensive tie, just faded jeans and white linen shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Ethan, their son now a year and a half of pure energy, ran uncontrolled between tables under the attentive and loving gaze of Beatrice, who had spontaneously become the grandmother the child deserved and Jason never had. On the restaurant's main wall, in a strategic place of honor, 2 framed photos side by side. The first, that viral and painful image of Emily fallen on the floor of the old Riverside Grill, the brutal moment of humiliation that had become a national headline. The second, emotionally taken at the joyful inauguration of Roots and River, showing Emily smiling radiantly, Jason protectively embracing her from behind, Ethan in chubby arms. The simple but profound caption said, "Some falls are God's pushes in the right direction." Rachel rushed from the kitchen with more steaming orders. Table 7 wants to know if dessert comes with the famous story of how you two met. Tell them I fell. He lifted me up, and the rest is romantic complication, Emily responded, smiling with that glow in her eyes. Your life seems like a soap opera. It is. But it is my soap opera, and I chose the ending. The restaurant prospered in a way that surprised even the two of them. It did not have the artificial glamour of the Whitman family's places, no crystal chandelier, or imported orchids, or white-gloved servers. But it had soul. It had history. It had real people talking about real problems while eating real food. And that, they discovered, was worth infinitely more. Lucas had been publicly exposed. The documents Jason delivered to authorities revealed years of corruption, embezzlement, bribes. The Whitman family initially tried to cover it up, of course, but truth has an inconvenient way of finding light. Lucas was removed from the company, prosecuted, and the last Jason heard was that he was living in another state, trying to rebuild a reputation that was never solid. He had signed Ethan's paternity recognition, paid support on time, but never asked to see his son. Jason did not know if he felt pity or anger, probably both. Henry and Margaret had initially tried to rescue Jason, using elaborate emotional blackmail, veiled threats, empty promises. But he had learned something fundamental. Some bridges need to be burned so you can build better bridges. They spoke occasionally now, always tense, always polite, always with Beatrice mediating because she was the only one who could talk to Jason without judging. Emily's mother had appeared 6 months after Ethan's birth, not with apologies because she did not know how to apologize, but with a cornbread made with her own hands. It was a start. Small, crooked, imperfect. But it was a start. Her father still had not spoken to Emily directly, but her younger sister Deborah now visited every Sunday and was in love with her nephew. That quiet night, after closing the restaurant and cleaning everything with Rachel's help, Jason and Emily went up to the rooftop of the building where everything had started years ago. Ethan slept soundly in his stroller. The city shone infinitely below, Columbus in all its chaotic and beautiful glory. Happy? Jason asked, pulling her close. Incredibly, absurdly, impossible not to be. Even without a mansion, without infinite money, without luxurious amenities. Emily turned to him, her eyes shining with that love that grows slowly and stays forever. Especially without all that, because I consciously chose you, not the billionaire CEO, not the heavy surname, not the empire, you, the man who wakes up early to make coffee, the man who sings off-key for his son to sleep, the man who was not afraid to lose everything to gain what really matters. Jason kissed her slowly, as if they had all the time in the world, and maybe they did. "You know I love you, right?" he murmured against her lips. "I know. And you know I love you back." "I know, but I like to hear it," she laughed. "I love you. I love you. I love you. Enough? It is never enough, but it is a good start." Below, the city continued alive. Cars honking, music leaking from bars, laughter echoing from open windows. Columbus never stopped, never slept. And there, on that simple rooftop, with a sleeping sun and a life rebuilt brick by brick, Emily realized something fundamental. She had fallen on that restaurant floor 2 years ago, not because she was weak, but because sometimes we need to fall to discover who will really lift us up. And Jason, who had spent 36 years being who others wanted him to be, had discovered that the best version of himself was hidden in a Franklinton apartment, in a pregnant server who did not apologize for existing. In the end, the meeting that began with humiliation ended with dignity. The love that was born from chance became a conscious choice. Every day, always. And if someone asked Emily if she would change anything if she went back in time, she would say no. Because that fall, that viral video, that public shame, had been the beginning of everything. Sometimes you need to fall to learn to fly. So, did you enjoy this story? If the answer is yes, do not forget to subscribe to the channel, leave that special like, and hit the notification bell. This way you will be helping so that other people, just like you, can receive beautiful and emotional stories like this one. Your support makes all the difference. Until the next story, full of emotion.